Godfather of Irish Drill. Shout out my boy, Demi TV.
It's Wave God in this motherfucker. Hey, shout my nigga Demi T though.
Got the song pop like I'm Iggy. All they talking about is last night like I'm Demi. Say you got.
Rupees donated $5. Damn ski pulled the Michael.
Dean TV Cooler merch in the description box. Go copy, son. Click the link in the description box below and support your boy.
What's up, Dean family and Dean Nation? Today we're doing a reaction to most amazing top 10 evil people in history worse than Jeffrey Dahmer. And if you watch the Jeffrey Dahmer series documentary on Netflix, yeah, here are even worse people worse than him. You feel me? We finna get into it. Go show top 10 some love. Original link and channel be in the description box below. So go show them some love. You feel me? And check out the original video in the description box below. And check out the Dean TV merch in the description box below. Also go copy some heat and drip. You feel me? And no further ado, let's get into this reaction. You feel me?
Better than, worse than, who's to say? It's safe to say that everyone on this list has done some horrific things. Here are the top 10 evil people in history worse
Enlighten me, Olivia.
than Jeffrey Dahmer. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Israel Keyes. Israel is quite a prolific serial killer and truly is a terrifying person. While everyone on this list is horrible, Israel is particularly scary because of the fact that he had no MO or type. He just killed at random. In fact, he was
What the fuck? He look like he's in. He look like he's on. What you call that? He did it.
so prepared for these random crimes that he left kill kits all over the United States so that he would be prepared for whenever whoever he chose crossed his path. It isn't quite clear how many of these crimes he committed, and many missing persons reports that are still open could potentially be linked to him. It is said that Israel had a sort of admiration and obsession with other prolific serial killers like Ted Bundy or Robert Hansen. He even said, quote, "I probably know every single serial killer that's ever been written about. It's kind of a hobby of mine." In March of 2012, Israel was finally apprehended and was to stand trial for his crimes, but unfortunately, while awaiting trial, he went on to take his own life. He left behind a note and a drawing of 11 skulls, which led authorities to believe that this may be the number of victims that he had. In our number 9 spot today, we have Richard Chase.
Wow, that's crazy.
This evil person is said to have taken the lives of 6 people within the span of a month between 1977 and 1978. That's a lot of people in a very short amount of time, which is so terrifying. Before his crimes, Richard's life was already full of terrible stories and horrific acts that had him spending time in mental health institutions before his crime spree
He look
started.
like something wrong with him. Like,
While at
bro.
these facilities, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but after going through treatment and beginning medication, he was deemed to no longer be a threat to society, and he was released into his mother's care. Here's where things take a turn for the worse. Instead of helping take care of Richard, his mother instead weaned him off of his medication and got him all set up with his own apartment. Nice. Really helpful and very cool of her. Initially, when he moved into the apartment, he had roommates, but eventually they all moved out and he was alone, which is when things really got wild. He began killing various animals, which he would then eat raw, sometimes mixing the organs with Coca-Cola in a blender and then drink.
What the fuck? That nigga, wow, wildin'. What the, this a bizarre.
After
what the
this, he would
fuck?
unfortunately go on his killing spree, which had horrific details and would only end when he was startled by a visitor at the home of where his final crime took place. He fled the crime scene but was later caught and stood trial. Although there
This
were
man
many
had
attempts
2 kill sprees. Like, what the fuck? Why y'all letting these motherfuckers out? Why? They torture these motherfuckers. Get these motherfuckers out of here. Like, what the fuck y'all letting these motherfuckers out? What? Why? Make it make sense.
to have him be spared of the death sentence. In the end, it didn't work. In December of 1980, Richard was found passed away in his jail cell after taking too many of his prescribed medication. In our number 8 spot today, we have Charles Ng. Charles' story really starts off shortly after he moved to the United States on a student visa. He dropped out after his first semester, and soon after he was involved in a hit-and-run accident. He then tried to avoid prosecution by enlisting in the United States Marine Corps using false documents that stated that his birthplace was within the United States. He was arrested by military police a year later for stealing automatic weapons, and then somehow he escaped custody, headed back toward Northern California, and this is where he met Leonard Lake, who is another real piece of work. Charles did end up going away and serving a bit of time, but it was only 18 months, and he was back with Leonard, and that is when the two started their crime spree together. It is believed that together the pair took the lives of somewhere from 11 to 25 different people. When Leonard was caught and
God damn. They were on a massacre. What the
in for
fuck?
questioning, he sneakily took a cyanide pill he had hidden in his jacket, and he took his own life, but Charles did end up standing trial. He was convicted for 11 of the killings, and he remains on death row at San Quentin. In our number 7 spot today, we have Rodney Alcala. Rodney is a horrible monster who was convicted and sentenced to death for 5 killings that he committed in California from 1977 to 1979. He also received an
Y'all seeing a pattern here?
additional 25 years to
like
life
that,
after pleading guilty to 2 other killings in New York in 1971 and 1977. Rodney got away with his crimes for a while because he wasn't the top of the lists of suspects, because he was said to be a, quote, charming photographer. Rodney is often referred to as the dating game killer because of his appearance on the show, with what we now know about him is absolutely horrifying. What's crazy is that he actually won the show he was
The dating game killer.
on, but the episode's bachelorette refused to go on a date with him because she found him too creepy. This is just a reminder to always trust your instincts. It isn't exactly known just how many victims Rodney had. It is potentially thought that it could be much higher than the number that he was convicted for. In July of last year, Rodney passed away in prison at the age of 77. In our number 6 spot today, we have Scott Erskine. In early life, Scott began to commit very violent crimes against others that I really can't even talk about here on YouTube. When he was around 17 years old,
He was just some terrible shit.
he
What
spent
the
around
fuck?
4 years in prison for one of his crimes, but then he was paroled after the 4 years, and he immediately began committing crimes
he
again.
did it.
In 1993,
He did
Scott
whatever.
invited
He
a
looked
woman
like
who was
he-
waiting for the bus into his home and ended up holding her hostage for
He
several
looked like he was
days.
about
After
to do
letting
what
her
he
go,
about
he
to
was
do.
quickly arrested, and he ended
He
up being
looked
sentenced
suspicious
to
as fuck.
70 years in prison. This is when he had to submit DNA to a database, and in March of 2001, that DNA was matched when the cold cases of the unsolved killings of Jonathan Sellers and Charlie Keever were reopened. In 2004, a jury sentenced him to death, and 6 days later, he was transferred to San Quentin. In an interesting turn of events, Scott did die on death row, but it wasn't due to a scheduled execution. Scott died a couple of years ago in July of 2020 after contracting COVID-19. In our number 5 spot today, we have
Wow, that's crazy. Well,
Tommy Lynn Sells. Tommy Lynn Sells was an American serial killer who was responsible for 22 confirmed deaths, but the authorities have said that they know that there are more. I actually watched an interview that he did, and one of the aspects that really creeped me out about him while watching him talk about his crimes is how you can tell that he committed these crimes because he wanted to. He just wanted to, and he liked it. In the end, Tommy was caught because of someone who survived his attack in the most incredible way. She was able to go on and give such a good description of him that it led to his capture, and she was able to positively identify him. Not only did she save her own life, but who knows how many others in the end. Tommy and his crimes were deemed so horrific that he did end up receiving a death sentence. While in jail, he said that there wasn't one day that went by where he didn't think about, quote, the one that got away. Tommy's life came to an end when he was executed on April 3rd, 2014. In our number 4 spot today, we have Gary Ridgeway. This horrible human being is
he sound like he's up to something.
also
This nigga
sometimes
name
known
is
as the Green
Ridgeway.
River Killer, and his crimes took place somewhere between 1982 to potentially as recent as 2001. He was convicted for 49 crimes, but he confessed to an unbelievable 71, which makes him the second most prolific serial killer in the United States in terms of confirmed killings. Most of his victims were either sex workers or women in other vulnerable circumstances, and through DNA profiling evidence in 2001, authorities were able to connect him to 4 of his crimes.
This nigga just killed prostitutes. Bruh. Y'all better hope this motherfucker ain't out now, cuz, bro. Y'all one of the fans, motherfuckers. Ooh.
From there, they made a deal with him where they would spare him the death
crazy.
sentence in exchange for the disclosure of all of the locations of all of the missing women. Gary took the deal and was spared the death sentence, and instead was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He remains in prison and is currently 73 years old. In our number 3 spot today, we have Chester Turner. Chester is an American serial killer who, on April 30th, 2007, was convicted of taking the lives of 11 women in the Los Angeles area, and on June 19th, 2014,
The first black person.
he was convicted of 4 more that they were able to tie back to him. He has been referenced to by prosecutors as one of the most prolific serial killers in the city's history, and if you know Los Angeles' history with things like that, that is not something to take lightly. I mean, like 4 of these were Los Angeles. Due to other crimes that Chester had committed where he was caught, he had to submit a DNA sample. This sample is what ended up leading authorities to solving these other horrific crimes that he had committed. At the time, the cases were turning cold, but thankfully Chester being caught for the other crimes is what allowed them to have a break in the case. In the original trial that led to conviction, Chester was sentenced to death, but at the following one in 2014, he also received an additional death sentence. In our number 2 spot today, we have Albert Fish. Albert is one of the oldest people on this list, but that does not mean his crimes were any less horrific than anyone else's. Dubbed the Brooklyn Vampire or the Moon Maniac or even the Boogeyman himself, it is clear that Albert was a terrible human who did awful things. In the early 1900s, Albert was arrested, tried, and convicted for killing and eating 3 people, but the horror was not over there. No, Albert
What the fuck?
began to claim that although people knew about 3, the number was closer to 100, and he even claimed that he had some in every state. It's disgusting. To make matters even worse, as if it already wasn't terrible enough, this deranged lunatic also sent a letter to the mother of one of his victims. He detailed everything about how he lured her and the rest of the horrific things that occurred afterwards, like how
Then he's sending people messages, letters
he proceeded
to
to
the family,
eat her
like
over
how
the
they
course of
kill
9
their
days.
people.
Yeah,
That's
this is just
fucked up.
another person that I'm not sad at all that they just don't exist anymore. That's
Yeah,
perfectly fine by me.
yeah,
In our number
yeah.
1 spot today, we have Quincy Allen. Quincy Allen is a man who went on a crime spree between July and August of 2002 where he took the lives of 4 people. His crime spree was actually inspired while he was in prison serving time for stealing a vehicle. It was here that a fellow inmate decided to start recruiting others and told him that he could get Quincy a job as a mafia hitman. When Quincy was released, he decided to buy a shotgun so he could start practicing. Man, I wish he showed this kind of dedication to literally anything else. Quincy started off his horrific crime spree on July 7th, 2002 by attacking a 51-year-old homeless man who was sleeping at the time. Luckily, this man was able to survive the attack. His crimes continued until he was arrested on August 14th, 2002. After his arrest and trial, Quincy received a sentence of death and is still on death row awaiting execution. His sentencing did not deter him from the criminal life, however, as in 2009, Quincy, along with another inmate, planned an attack on a correctional officer at the prison they both reside at. In the end, the guards had to use rubber bullets to subdue the pair. The correctional officer they attacked thankfully didn't succumb to his injuries, but he was forced to find another job as after the attack he was suffering from PTSD, and all the charges pertaining to this specific attack were later dropped by prosecutors who suggested that there was no point in trying someone who's
How come all the crazy black people ugly as fuck?
on death row. This did, however, get Quincy and the other inmates stripped of all of their privileges at the time, which included outside recreation, visitation, phone use, and canteen items. Quincy was intended to be executed on January 8th, 2010, but there was a stay of execution that was accepted, and as of July 26th, 2022, literally just like a few months ago, Quincy's death sentence was overturned. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking.
That's crazy. Hope you guys like that. Didn't feel D-Nation. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video on all social media. Comment below. Rash, you want to do next. See you guys next time. Love you guys.